Launch control, this is Houston. We are go for launch.
Hold on to your lug nuts. It's time for an overhaul.
Turn it up, son.
I'm your huckleberry. I don't give jobs, I hire men. You won't give me anything, and I won't give you anything.
Collision, sir.
Whoa, relax. We're not even moving.
There's no crying in baseball.
We are News New Mexico. It's Tuesday, February 7th, 2012. Jim Spence is on assignment. I'm Michael Swickard. Rachel Pulaski's here in studio, as is Aaron Henry Diaz. Jerry Harden is our producer-director. You can go to newsnem.com and follow along on our Newsmaker line. We have Marita Noon. She has a website, energymakes.america.org. That's how we always. That's what she always says. Now, Marita, let me ask you: why don't you say "Energy makes the world great"?
Well, because I'm really focused on trying to save America. Trying to save America is a big enough project for me.
All right. So all these other countries where energy actually makes them great, they're on their own.
Well, they've got to make their own bumper stickers. When I spoke in Canada a couple of years ago, I spoke in Calgary at an event, and for that event, I especially had bumper stickers made that said "Energy makes Canada great."
Oh, good.
Marita, so it looks like the production tax credit expiring soon, huh?
Yes, the production tax credit for wind energy. There's different production tax credits for different renewables, but the one for wind expires naturally at the end of 2012, and so that's now.
And you wrote a little bit about it in your column recently.
Yes, I did, Aaron. Thank you.
Can you expand a bit on that, please?
Oh, of course. I'd love to. What is happening is that we've got a lot of energy subsidies that are going out there. A lot of money is going out in energy subsidies, and most people are aware of it, particularly for solar because of Solyndra and all of the other similar money that we taxpayers have unwillingly invested in green energy. And we've put a lot of money into these things through subsidies, through loans, through tax credits, through a variety of different ways. And because of where the economy is, the American appetite for tax credits and underwriting energy has really waned. And so the wind energy industry is really having to fight to get this production tax credit extended. They have a bill, H.R. 3307, and this bill is proposed to be added on to the payroll tax extension, so that if the payroll tax extension gets passed at the end of this month, which it is expected that it will, in an election year nobody wants to take that away, so it's expected that will. But the HB 30 or HR 3307 is going to extend this tax credit for wind energy for another 4 years. Now, you might think, well, that sounds all well and fine. And I on my way home, I was in Washington, D.C. last week, and on my way home, I wrote most of this article on the plane. And I was talking to some guys in the bar in the Dallas airport between flights. And I was you're sitting there chatting with these total strangers, and I get out my little computer to work on it, and they say, "What are you working on?" And I tell them, and they say, "Oh, well, but we need to subsidize wind because it's a new energy, or it's a new industry." I'm like, no. We've been subsidizing wind for 20 years. And they were like, really? I had no idea. And it's like, if it can't make it on its own in 20 years, if it can't survive in a free market in 20 years, it's time in America that we say, no, we're not doing this any longer. And so that's kind of the basic premise of this article.
When I was a boy, we had a wind charger out at the ranch. It was our first electricity. It was 24 volts. There was a series of batteries in the cellar, and it did sort of run the lights a little bit, but it was 3/4 of a disaster at all times. And the tower is still there. When you go by the ranch, there's about a 50-foot tower to get up and get as much wind as possible, but the blades are off of it. But even in 1950, wind wasn't the answer. And what they recognized was the only way for the ranch to actually do well would be to string some wire to it and Otero Co-op send the power down the line. That was the only way it was really going to work.
Yeah, I mean, and we do know, just like you've mentioned, that in the 50s, wind, it is capable, the technology is there to generate electricity from wind. But it's not dispatchable, it's not available on demand, it's not 24/7, etc. I mean, I didn't really go into, in this particular article, I didn't go into a lot of the other arguments like land use, I didn't go into transmission lines, I didn't go into kills bats and birds, I didn't go into any of those usual arguments. I looked at it more strictly from an economic positioning, and there's another bill that's out there right now that what I'm really encouraging people to contact Congress. If you go to your website, people can go to newsnm.com, and it's .com, not .org, right? Anyway, you can go to newsnm.com, and at the end of the article where I talk about this other bill, which is H.R. 3308. H.R. 3307 is to extend the production tax credits for wind energy. H.R. 3308 ends all energy subsidies. So it ends solar, it ends wind, it ends biofuel, it ends ethanol, it ends oil and gas. And so it puts energy on a free market level playing field. And so I'm really encouraging people to use the link at the end of the article that's on newsnm.com and take the verbiage that's at the end of the article, massage it if you want to, but I've got the exact verbiage right in there, and just cut and paste that into an email to your congressional representatives.
All right. I typically like the fact that we have some other alternatives to oil and gas, simply because if there's any disruption, any fuel we've got, I just don't want to pay 50 cents a kilowatt hour. I want to pay 8 cents a kilowatt hour. I really don't want to pay 6 and 8 times as much for the same amount of power.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why the wind issue is becoming less popular and why the wind energy industry is desperate to get these subsidies extended.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
All right, yeah, paying 50 cents a kilowatt hour. That's what some Americans are saying. On our Newsmaker line, we're talking with Marita Noon, EnergyMakesAmericaGreat.org.
After 20 years, Marita, how many, I noticed that you wrote in the article, how many power plants has wind energy closed down?
Well, that's the thing, not a one. Even for those people who support wind energy because they say, oh, well, we need to stop getting CO2 in the air. We need to stop putting so much CO2 out, and coal is dirty and so forth. And, all those wind turbines that are out there have not eliminated one coal-fueled power plant. And in fact, they actually create the need for more fossil fuel because you can't, as Michael mentioned earlier with the story of the windmill at his ranch in the 50s, you can't, it doesn't work all the time. And so you have to have backup power. Now, someone on a ranch, isolated like Michael's childhood home, perhaps, or maybe a true believer. I mean, I was speaking a couple weeks ago up at the Roundhouse at the opening of the legislative session here in New Mexico, and we had some Occupy Wall Street type protesters who were out there with signs, and when I was done, one of them came up to me and kind of, raged in my face and said, how come you only talk about energy from the ground? And he pointed up at the sun, and he said, there is energy, blah, 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 and he said, I live off the grid. And I took his shoulders in my hands, and I shook his shoulders, and I said to him, you know what, and that is the wonderful thing about America. If you want to live that way, you can live that way. But if I don't want to live that way, I don't have to. And you know what? The utility companies are required by law to provide electricity for us consumers 24/7.
It'd be kind of hard if we all lived off the grid. I suspect.
Yeah, I mean, you can't put enough solar panels on the roof of a 20-story apartment building in New York City. You just can't.
There's not enough real estate.
Do that. Exactly, because the wind and solar in particular, which are primarily what people refer to when they talk about renewables, is they are very land intensive. And another interesting little fact I discovered in researching this article, I didn't end up putting it in, it kind of was off message for the article, but a little interesting tidbit I discovered is that there are approximately 14,000 defunct and non-operating wind turbines in this country. So just kind of standing up there 500 feet in the air, kind of rusting. We have these dead wind turbines, and they're too expensive to run and maintain, and the payoff isn't there, which is why they have been abandoned.
And how many government subsidies subsidize those dead turbines, you think?
Yeah, well, probably 100% because they're not viable without. So that's our taxpayer money there, as my article title is, billions, all those billions blowing in the wind, and there they are.
Right. Well, Marita, one of the things is we want our energy to be where we don't even notice it. You don't think before you turn on the power switch, I wonder if there's going to be power. And in the United States, we've pretty much got that. In other countries, they say, well, we only get power between 8 and 10 in the morning, and they've got the time that they're going to get the power. That's harder living.
Yes, it is much harder living, and I'm going to tell you a little story. It hardly represents hard living, but on my honeymoon, my husband and I went to the Caribbean, and we were, there's stories in my book, and we were in, I can't remember, Virgin Gorda, I think, and we went to the bar and we ordered a pina colada. And the guy says, in the Caribbean accent, which I cannot effectively do, but he said, "We have no current." And I couldn't understand what he said. And I said, "What?" He said, "We have no electricity." That's hard living. No pina coladas on your honeymoon.
Oh, man. I'm telling you, he owes you big time for taking you there.
Marita, now the New Mexico Environmental Improvement Board, recently overturned the Richardson administration's cap-and-trade program. What are your thoughts on that?
Hallelujah.
Can you say that again?
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Yes, no, I worked hard to, in the Richardson administration, I worked hard to get citizens to those hearings to speak out against the cap-and-trade decision. And in the recent hearings last month, I had people, and in November for both the cap-and-trade and the carbon cap, the two different plans, I got people there to again speak out against those decisions and encourage the Environmental Improvement Board to make wise choices for the economy of New Mexico, and so I'm obviously very pleased to hear that.
So what are some of the things that we will see immediately, that households will see immediately with the benefit of overturning the cap-and-trade?
I don't know, honestly, that you'll see much because because of the timeline of implementing them, there was not much that was done yet. That it really has made a big difference. So, and because of the fact that it was back into a hearing, I don't know honestly if there's any real specific changes that people are going to see. Which is kind of a sad thing in a way, because what's going to happen is what would have been implemented in the future will not happen. But what it would have done is, if you're a business and you're looking to relocate, say, from California, which many businesses are looking to relocate from California, and you're looking at New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, because we all have sort of comparable weather to California, so they'd be an easy move, it would have made New Mexico less desirable because energy costs would have been more expensive, and other issues would have made New Mexico an more unfriendly place for business. And Governor Martinez is certainly working to make New Mexico open for business, as she likes to say.
All right. That was a step in the right direction there. But I think that everybody started with that in mind. What is it that you're going to have to fight the hardest about in the next year?
In the next year?
Yeah, what do you think you're going to fight the hardest?
Well, we're still working on the lizard, and then we've also got repealing the Renewable Portfolio Standard, which is not up this legislative session, but along with the reversal of the cap and trade and the increasing public awareness of how these regulations are impacting energy prices, my hope is to get the statewide cap and trade, Renewable Portfolio Standard repealed. Ohio is looking at doing that right now. They've got a bill up that would repeal their Renewable Portfolio Standard, and other states are looking at that as well.
And in that sense, that right there is something that dollars and cents goes into on everyone's power bills.
Yes, I mean, we talked a while ago. I spent some time last year, worked very hard with PNM on trying to come up with how on earth they were going to economically provide electricity for the citizens of New Mexico while meeting the Renewable Portfolio Standard that our state legislature put through in 2007. And bottom line is it can't be done. You can't economically meet the Renewable Portfolio Standard. So it's time to repeal it.
All right, Marita Noon, EnergyMakesAmericaGreat.org. Thank you for what you do.